My name's Sheila, and I've always dreamed of becoming a pediatrician. After years of hard work, I finally graduated from medical college and landed my first job at a local clinic. Life was good, but something was missing. I wanted more than just a career, I longed for a family of my own. One sunny afternoon, my best friend Jess called me up. "Sheila, I've got someone you need to meet," she said, her voice bubbling with excitement. "His name's Mike, and he's looking for something serious. I think you two would hit it off." I was skeptical at first. Blind dates weren't really my thing, but Jess was persistent. "Fine," I sighed. "Set it up." A week later, I found myself sitting across from Mike at a small coffee shop downtown. He was tall, with kind eyes and a warm smile that put me at ease almost immediately. "So, Sheila," he said, stirring his coffee. "Jess tells me you're a pediatrician. That must be rewarding." I nodded, feeling myself relax. "It is. I love working with kids." "What about you? What do you do?" As Mike talked about his job as an engineer, I found myself drawn in by his passion and humor. We chatted for hours, losing track of time until the barista politely informed us they were closing. From that moment on, Mike and I were inseparable. We supported each other through long work days and celebrated each other's successes. 2 years flew by in a blur of happiness and shared dreams. We decided on a small, intimate wedding. Neither of us wanted anything flashy, we just wanted to celebrate our love with our closest friends and family. The day was perfect, filled with laughter and happy tears. As we exchanged vows, I looked into Mike's eyes and saw our future stretching out before us. A home filled with love, the pitter-patter of little feet, a lifetime of happiness together. After the wedding, I began to communicate more with Mike's mother, Linda. She was a petite woman with graying hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. As we chatted over dinner that night, Linda couldn't stop talking about how excited she was to be a grandmother someday. "All my friends are already spoiling their grandkids," she said with a laugh. "I can't wait for my turn." I exchanged a glance with Mike, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. We hadn't really discussed children yet, but I knew I wanted them. Seeing the soft smile on Mike's face, I realized he did too. The first year of our marriage flew by in a whirlwind of love and laughter. Mike and I settled into a comfortable routine, balancing our careers with our home life. We talked about starting a family, agreeing that we were ready to take that next step. Linda's enthusiasm for grandchildren only grew stronger with each passing month. At first, her eagerness was endearing, but as time went on, it started to feel like pressure. "Sheila, dear," she'd say during our weekly family dinners, "have you thought about when you'll start trying for a baby? Mike's not getting any younger, you know." I'd force a smile, trying to hide my discomfort. "We're working on it, Linda. These things take time." But as the months passed without a positive pregnancy test, I started to worry. Was something wrong? Should we see a doctor? The stress began to take its toll, affecting both my mood and my relationship with Mike. One night, after another dinner filled with Linda's not-so-subtle hints, I broke down in tears. "Hey, what's wrong?" Mike asked, pulling me into his arms. What if I can't get pregnant?" I sobbed. "Your mom will be so disappointed, and you." Mike cut me off, cupping my face in his hands. "Listen to me, Sheila. I love you. If we have kids, great. If we don't, that's okay too. All that matters is that we're together." His words comforted me, but the worry lingered. I decided to see my doctor, just to make sure everything was okay. Dr. Anderson, a kind older woman with salt and pepper hair, ran a series of tests. When the results came back, she called me into her office. "Everything looks normal, Sheila," she said with a reassuring smile. "Sometimes these things just take time. Try to relax and let nature take its course." We decided to stop actively trying and just enjoy our life together. I focused on eating right and living healthily, hoping it would help our chances. As our third wedding anniversary approached, I started to feel different. My breasts were tender, and I felt nauseous in the mornings. Could it be? With shaking hands, I took a pregnancy test. As I waited for the results, I paced our small bathroom, my heart pounding. When the timer on my phone beeped, I looked at the test. 2 pink lines. Positive. When Mike got home from work, I could barely contain my excitement. I'd wrapped the positive test in a small box with a bow. "What's this?" he asked, looking confused. "Open it," I urged, grinning from ear to ear. As he lifted the lid and saw the test, his eyes widened. Are we? I nodded, happy tears spilling down my cheeks. "We're having a baby." That night, as we lay in bed, Mike's hand resting protectively on my stomach, I felt a peace I hadn't known in months. Everything was falling into place. The next day, we called Linda to share the news. Her excited shriek nearly deafened me. "Oh, this is wonderful," she cried. "I'm going to be a grandmother." "When are you due? Do you think it's a boy or a girl?" "Oh, I have so much shopping to do." As Linda rattled on, I exchanged an amused glance with Mike. Our journey to parenthood was just beginning, and despite the challenges we'd faced, I couldn't wait to see what the future held. The weeks following our announcement were a whirlwind of excitement and preparation. Mike and I threw ourselves into getting ready for the baby, transforming our spare room into a nursery. We painted the walls a soft yellow, assembled a crib, and filled drawers with tiny clothes. Linda's enthusiasm knew no bounds. She showered us with gifts, onesies, blankets, toys, and called almost daily with advice and questions. I appreciated her excitement, but sometimes it felt overwhelming. One day, after she'd announced our news to what felt like the entire town, I had to have a word with her. "Linda," I said gently, "we're thrilled you're excited about the baby. But could you maybe tone it down a bit? We're trying not to tell everyone just yet." She looked hurt for a moment, but quickly recovered. "Of course, dear. I'm just so happy. But I understand." At 24 weeks, I had a routine checkup scheduled. That morning, I woke up feeling a bit off, but I brushed it off as normal pregnancy discomfort. I was examining a toddler with an ear infection when a sharp pain shot through my abdomen. I gasped, steadying myself against the examination table. "Dr. Sheila," my nurse, Jenny, asked, concern evident in her voice. "Are you okay?" I opened my mouth to respond, but another wave of pain hit me. This time, I felt something warm trickling down my legs. I looked down in horror, to see blood staining my scrubs. "Jenny," I whispered, my voice shaking, "I need help." The next few moments were a blur. Jenny called for assistance, and suddenly I was surrounded by my colleagues. As they prepped me for surgery, I grabbed her hand. "Save my baby," I pleaded, tears streaming down my face. "Please, save my baby." The last thing I remember before the anesthesia took hold was praying for a miracle. When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was the pain, a dull, throbbing ache in my abdomen. Then I realized something was missing. My bump. My baby. Mike was by my side, his eyes red and puffy from crying. When he saw I was awake, he took my hand, squeezing it gently. "Sheila," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. They couldn't save the baby." Dr. Rodriguez came in then, her face grave. "Sheila, I'm so sorry for your loss. We did everything we could, but the placental abruption was too severe. We had to perform a partial hysterectomy to save your life. I'm afraid you won't be able to carry children in the future." Her words hit me like a physical blow. Not only had I lost my baby, but I'd lost any chance of ever carrying another child. I broke down, sobbing uncontrollably as Mike held me, his own tears falling silently. The days following my return home from the hospital were the darkest of my life. The nursery we had lovingly prepared now stood as a painful reminder of our loss. Returning to work was a challenge I wasn't sure I was ready for. How could I care for other people's children when I'd lost my own? But I knew I couldn't hide away forever. My first day back, I barely made it through the door before breaking down. The sympathetic looks from my colleagues, the sound of children in the waiting room, it was all too much. Dr. Thompson, the clinic director, called me into his office. "Sheila," he said gently, "I can't imagine what you're going through. But I want you to know we're here for you. If you need more time or if you'd like to consider a different role for a while, just say the word." His kindness broke through the wall I'd built around my emotions. Through tears, I admitted, "I don't think I can face treating children right now. It's too painful." Dr. Thompson nodded understandingly. "How about working as an administrator for a while? You know the clinic inside out, and it would give you time to heal without the daily reminders." Grateful for the lifeline he'd thrown me, I agreed. The change in roles gave me something to focus on, a way to feel useful without constantly confronting my loss. At home, Mike and I started seeing a grief counselor. Dr. Evans, a calm, compassionate woman, helped us navigate the turbulent waters of our emotions. "It's okay to not be okay," she'd remind us. "Grief isn't linear. There will be good days and bad days. The important thing is to face them together." Slowly, painfully, we began to heal. We talked about our lost child, sharing our dreams and sorrows. We cried together, held each other, and gradually found moments of peace amidst the storm of grief. But Linda remained a constant source of tension. She seemed unable or unwilling to understand the depth of our loss or the permanence of our situation. Things came to a head at my birthday dinner. Mike had arranged a small gathering, just close family and friends. It was the first time I'd felt up to socializing since the loss. But it was Linda who started the conversation first. "Sheila, dear," she said, "I've been doing some research. There are all sorts of new fertility treatments these days. I'm sure if we find the right doctor." I cut her off. "You know," I said cautiously, "Mike and I have been talking. We've been thinking that maybe, someday, we might consider adoption." The table fell silent. I looked around, hoping for support, but was met with mixed reactions. Mike squeezed my hand encouragingly, but Linda's face twisted in disgust. "Adoption," she spat out the word as if it tasted bad. "Oh no, that won't do at all. Can you imagine? Some stranger's child, probably with all sorts of problems. Who knows what kind of family they came from? No, no, you need your own child, not some cast-off." I felt as if I'd been slapped. Mike's face darkened with anger. "Mom," he said, his voice dangerously low, "I think it's time for you to leave." As Linda gathered her things, muttering about ungrateful children, I sat frozen, tears streaming down my face. Our healing, as fragile as it was, felt shattered all over again. In the days that followed, Linda tried to reach out, leaving voicemails and sending text messages. But neither Mike nor I was ready to face her. We needed time to process and heal. At work, I threw myself into my new administrative role. The distance from direct patient care was helping, but I still felt a pang every time I heard a child's laughter echoing down the hallway. Dr. Thompson was supportive, always checking in to make sure I was coping okay. One afternoon, as I was filing some paperwork, I overheard two nurses talking in hushed tones. "Did you hear about Dr. Sheila?" one whispered. "I heard she was drinking during her pregnancy. No wonder she lost the baby." I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. Where had they heard such a horrible lie? I hadn't touched a drop of alcohol since before we started trying for a baby. Shaking, I retreated to the bathroom, locking myself in a stall as tears streamed down my face. How could anyone think that? How could they be so cruel? When I got home that evening, I told Mike what I'd overheard. His face turned red with anger. "That's it," he growled, pulling out his phone. "I'm calling my mother. She's the only one who would spread such vicious lies." I listened as Mike confronted Linda, his voice rising with each passing moment. "How dare you," he shouted. "Do you have any idea what you've done? If you don't stop this right now, we're going to the police." This is slander, Mom. After he hung up, Mike pulled me into a tight embrace. I'm so sorry, Sheila. I never thought she'd stoop this low. The next day, the rumors at work seemed to have mysteriously dried up. No one mentioned anything about drinking or my lost baby. It seemed Linda had gotten the message. But our relief was short-lived. A few days later, I opened our mailbox to find a postcard. On the front was a picture of a happy family with young children. When I turned it over, my blood ran cold. In bold letters, someone had written, "You will never be a mother." The postcards kept coming, each one more hurtful than the last. Then, one morning, we opened our front door to find a horrifying sight. A doll, smeared with what looked like blood, hung from our porch with a note attached, "This is what you did to your baby." I collapsed, overcome with grief and horror. Mike caught me, his own face a mask of shock and rage. As he helped me inside, a thought struck him. "The neighbors," he said suddenly. "The Johnsons across the street have security cameras. Maybe they caught something." While I sat trembling on the couch, Mike went to talk to our neighbors. He returned an hour later, a grim look on his face and a flash drive in his hand. "You're not going to believe this," he said, plugging the drive into our TV. The grainy footage showed our porch in the early hours of the morning. A figure approached, hung the doll, and quickly retreated. Even in the poor quality video, there was no mistaking who it was. Linda. We stared at the screen in disbelief. How could she do this? How could a mother be so cruel to her own son and daughter-in-law? We pulled up to Linda's tidy suburban home, its cheerful exterior a stark contrast to the ugliness we were about to confront. Mike took a deep breath, squeezing my hand before we got out of the car. "Ready?" he asked, his voice tight with tension. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. We walked up to the front door, and Mike rang the bell. Moments later, Linda appeared, her face lighting up at the sight of us. "Mike. Sheila. What a lovely surprise," she exclaimed, reaching out to hug us. Mike stepped back, his face hard. "We need to talk, Mom. Now." Linda's smile faltered, but she ushered us inside. Once we were seated in her living room, Mike didn't waste any time. "We know what you've been doing," he said, his voice cold. "The postcards, the doll." Linda's face went pale, then flushed with indignation. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Save it, Mom," Mike cut her off. "We have proof." I pulled out the flash drive and handed it to Mike. He plugged it into Linda's TV and played the security footage. We watched in silence as the video showed Linda hanging the blood-smeared doll on our porch. When the video ended, Linda sat in stunned silence, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "Why?" I finally asked, my voice breaking. "How could you do this to us?" "To me?" Linda's face crumpled, tears filling her eyes. But instead of remorse, I saw only anger and bitterness. "You," she spat, pointing a finger at me. "You're the reason my son doesn't have children. You're damaged goods, and you're keeping him from having a family." Her words hit me like a physical blow. I recoiled, tears springing to my eyes. Mike stood up, his face contorted with rage. "That's enough," he shouted. "Sheila is my wife, and I love her. What happened wasn't her fault. If you can't accept that, if you can't treat her with respect, then you're no longer a part of our lives." As we turned to leave, Linda called out, her voice desperate. "Wait. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. I just wanted grandchildren so badly. Please, don't go." But we didn't look back. We walked out of Linda's house, closing the door on that chapter of our lives. Over the next few weeks, we focused on healing. We continued our sessions with Dr. Evans, working through our grief and the trauma of Linda's actions. Life was just starting to feel normal again when the unexpected happened. An invitation arrived in the mail. Linda was hosting a Thanksgiving dinner and wanted us to attend. She wrote that she wanted to make peace and promised a celebration we'd remember for a lifetime. I was immediately wary. After everything that had happened, it was hard to trust Linda's intentions. "I don't know about this, Mike," I said, handing him the invitation. "It feels off." Mike read it, his brow furrowed. "I know, but she's still my mom, Sheila. Maybe she's genuinely trying to make amends?" I could see the hope in his eyes, the love he still held for his mother, despite everything. It tugged at my heart. "Okay," I agreed reluctantly. "We'll go. But at the first sign of trouble, we leave. Deal?" When Thanksgiving arrived, we drove to Linda's house with a mix of hope and apprehension. The house was full of relatives and friends, all chatting and laughing. Linda greeted us warmly, as if the past few months had never happened. But then, halfway through the evening, the doorbell rang. Linda excused herself to answer it, and when she returned, she wasn't alone. With her was a woman I'd only seen in old photos, Mike's ex-fiancée, Jessica. My stomach dropped. Something was very wrong. Linda clinked her glass, calling for everyone's attention. "I have an announcement to make," she said, her voice sickly sweet. "As you all know, my dear son Mike has been married to Sheila for a few years now." She paused, her eyes finding mine in the crowd. "Unfortunately, Sheila is infertile and unable to give Mike the children he deserves." A collective gasp went through the room. I felt as if I'd been punched in the gut. Mike grabbed my hand, his face a mask of shock and anger. Linda continued, gesturing to Jessica. "That's why I've invited Jessica here tonight. She and Mike were once engaged, and I think it's time they rekindled that relationship. Jessica can give Mike the family he needs." The room fell silent. I could feel all eyes on me, a mixture of pity and curiosity in their gazes. Mike started to speak, but I beat him to it. Something in me snapped, and all the pain and anger I'd been holding back came pouring out. "How dare you," I said, my voice shaking but strong. "How dare you trivialize what we've been through?" I looked around at the stunned faces of the guests. "You want to know the truth?" "Yes, I lost a baby. We lost a baby. And it nearly destroyed us." I turned to Linda, my anger giving me strength. "And you made it so much worse. You sent us cruel postcards, left horrifying gifts on our doorstep. You spread vicious lies about me." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Linda's face had gone pale. "You don't believe me?" I asked the room at large. "Fine. See for yourself." I pulled out my phone, queued up the security camera footage, and played it for everyone to see. The room watched in horror as Linda hung the ketchup-smeared doll on our door. The room was thick with tension, following my outburst. Just as I thought things couldn't get any more intense, Jessica, Mike's ex-fiancée, stepped forward and cleared her throat. "If I may," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I'd like to say something." All eyes turned to her, including Linda's, who looked expectant, as if Jessica was about to save the situation. How wrong she was. "First of all," Jessica continued, "I want to apologize to Sheila and Mike. I had no idea about any of this. Linda told me that she wanted to talk to me about my parents. If I had known the truth, I never would have come." She took a deep breath, before dropping another bombshell. "But more than that, I need to set the record straight. Linda, your plan was doomed from the start. I'm engaged to someone else. We're getting married in the spring." Gasps echoed around the room. Linda's face paled even further. "But that's not all," Jessica went on. "The real reason Mike and I broke up years ago was because I never wanted children. In fact, I had surgery to ensure I couldn't have them. Mike found out, and that's why we ended our relationship." The irony of the situation wasn't lost on anyone. Linda had tried to replace me with a woman who couldn't, and didn't want to, have children either. One by one, people began gathering their coats and bags. The party was clearly over. Linda stood in the middle of her living room, looking bewildered as her carefully orchestrated Thanksgiving fell apart around her. "Wait," she called out weakly. "Where is everyone going?" The turkey. But no one was listening. The last guest slipped out the door, leaving just the four of us, Mike, me, Jessica, and Linda. Jessica turned to us. I should go too. Again, I'm so sorry for everything. With that, she quickly made her exit. Mike took a step towards his mother, his face a storm of emotions. Mom, he said, his voice low and controlled, what you've done here tonight is unforgivable. I don't want to hear your excuses. You're no longer my mother. I don't want to see you or speak to you ever again. As we stepped out into the cool night air, I heard Linda's anguished cries behind us. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. We decided that we needed to make a clean break. We sent out emails to all our relatives, explaining that we were cutting all ties with Linda. It was a difficult decision, but we knew it was necessary for our mental health and the well-being of our future family. In the weeks following the disastrous Thanksgiving dinner, Mike and I found ourselves at a crossroads. After many long, heartfelt discussions, we made a decision that would change our lives forever. We decided to adopt. The process was lengthy and, at times, overwhelming. We filled out countless forms, underwent home studies, and attended parenting classes. But with each step, we felt more certain that this was the right path for us. Immersing myself in the adoption process allowed me to focus on something positive, pushing the painful memories of Linda's actions to the back of my mind. I even felt strong enough to return to my job as a pediatrician. Just a week later, we received the news we'd been hoping for: we'd been approved for adoption. Our caseworker called to tell us about a 3-year-old boy named Ethan who needed a forever home. The day we met Ethan was one I'll never forget. He was small for his age, with a mop of curly brown hair and the biggest brown eyes I'd ever seen. He was shy at first, hiding behind his social worker's legs, but it didn't take long for his curious nature to win out. "Do you like dinosaurs?" he asked Mike timidly, holding up a worn T-Rex toy. Mike's face lit up. "I love dinosaurs. Did you know that T-Rex had the strongest bite of any land animal ever?" Ethan's eyes widened with wonder, and just like that, a connection was formed. One day, as we were preparing to leave after a visit, Ethan looked up at us with those big brown eyes and asked, "Are you going to be my new mommy and daddy?" Mike and I exchanged glances, our eyes filling with tears of joy. "We'd like to be," I said softly. "Would you like that?" Ethan nodded enthusiastically, then threw his arms around us both. As we drove home that day, my heart felt fuller than it had in years. We still had a long road ahead, paperwork to complete, adjustments to make, a lifetime of love to give. But for the first time in a long time, I felt truly hopeful about the future.